Welcome to Phenomenal Conversations. Today I've got the great pleasure and honour of interviewing Alexander Laszlo on the working title of Evolutionary Perspectives and the Syntony of Evolution, but that won't be the final title. And before we begin the interview, I'm going to just say a little bit about Phenomenal Conversations. So Phenomenal Conversations endeavour to co-create regenerative worlds and regenerative culture. We also interview people that I sense and feel are living the change, like such as Alexander and many other people that are pioneers in their field. And then also we try to expand imagination in the midst of the polycrisis. We also try to amplify meaningfulness and nuance in a chaotic world. And also I try to cover or pose profound questions. So that's the introduction and the mission. And we have two key formats. One format is the traditional podcast interview format that we're doing today, that I'm interviewing Laszlo in. But also 2 or 3 times a year I have a live conversation with the pioneer, and then we have a group conversation exploring the issues that are there and surfacing a collective wisdom that isn't only dependent on the expertise of the presenter, but is a shared experience. So that's what we try to do every 2 or 3 times a year. And if you're watching this video on YouTube or listening on Spotify or other platforms, please do like, subscribe, comment and share, because that helps us expand our reach. So that being said, we're going to do an unusual introduction. Alexander is multi-talented and multifaceted, and he's offered to share some flute music, which will be a first for Phenomenal Conversation. So we'll do a little bit of grounding through flute music, and then we'll go into the standard format of the interview. So thanks so much for joining, Alexander. I'd love to hear you play some flute. Beautiful, thank you so much. I love the sound that very simple instrument makes, so thank you. So that being said, Alexander, we've got a series of questions to ask you as is standard, but I'd love you to just give a bit of background. You've got an enormous amount of work that you've done in this field, and you're a pioneer of kind of evolutionary cosmology and life, as it were, or expression of it. But I'd love to hear something you feel would be relevant to today's discussion that people might find interesting.
Thanks so much, Dave. And first of all, just wanted to thank you for your grace and hospitality and for this wonderful show. I think Phenomenal Conversations is, well, phenomenal. So thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to this conversation with you. So maybe I can start with a little story.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So something that I think perhaps was maybe a kind of first awakening for me. I was a strange word, but some kind of turning point in my life. It might have been when I was around 11 or so. Yeah, so I'd say around that. My parents were living in Tuscany, and they still are there. in Italy. Yes, both of them. And just spoke with them today, in fact. And my father is now soon to be 94, and my mother is right there with him as well. Um, in any event, at that time, when I was 11, just a few years ago, we had a very small little boat that we would go on the Mediterranean with. My father really liked that. It was really comfortable for two people. Four people could be in it, and so we were four: my brother, my mother, my father, and I. And my mother, my brother, my father was sitting in the area where there's a little place where they could sit. My father was holding the tiller, the rudder. And I was standing by the mast in the front. It's just one mast and it has one sail, which you could put a front sail on it. Actually, I think there was a front sail as well. Yes. So there's a front sail, a main mast. And it was a very calm day. So we're just sort of going along, just enjoying being out in the water, nothing much happening. And we looked to the beach, which was, maybe some 50 meters away, a little more. We were a little further out from where the swimmers are. And we saw a gust of wind, but it was one of these sudden gales that we saw moving along the beach, and it was whipping up the beach umbrellas. Now, these are big, strong umbrellas, and it was whipping them up and tossing them aside as it moved. We saw the front coming down the beach. We knew it was going to hit the boat any moment. So I didn't have time to do anything. I just stood there by the mast, and my father let go of the boom, that thing that holds the main mast. And it's when the gust hit us, he held uh, the
Rudder.
tiller,
Yeah.
yeah, that holds the rudder, and he held onto that, which is good, but let go of the mast, which is good. These are all good things. And so the boat just sort of like went like a speedboat, went up and went forward. But because the wind pushed, because he had let go of the mast, it pushed us forward rather than to the side, which would have been a distinct possibility if he had fought the wind. Um, but as it came up and pushed us along, I kept my balance by the mast, and I wasn't clinging. I wasn't like fighting it either.
Mm.
And it seemed so natural that I just was up and moving with it. And I caught my mother's eyes, and she was clearly, I don't know, terrified, but maybe not terrified, but she was very worried about the situation. I could see that her whole family is there. And I caught her eyes, and I was, for some reason, very calm. And in that connection with her, there was a calming.
Mm.
And I was just moving with the flow. And it seemed the most natural thing in the world. It didn't seem violent. It seemed forceful, but not forcing.
Mm. Mm.
And my response, without trying it, without meditating on it, was to just move with it. And then the gale passed and the boat settled down and everything was fine.
Mm.
And this is where I think I had this first experience of what I call syntony. But we'll be talking about that, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
that's this experience of just, and I think the key here, Dave, is letting go, but not disconnecting.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's key because often we talk about letting go, and often there's a sense of now I'm just going to go with the flow wherever it goes. But it's a kind of disconnection, and that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
not what's just to share the little story.
Well, it's a brilliant story and very poignant. And it brings me on to my first little challenges or provocations for you, for people that might be new to your work. There's three terms that I've discovered that you use quite regularly. And so if you could define them succinctly, it'll help us as we go through the next phase of the dialogue. So could you give us a one-sentence flavour of each of the three words? Syntony, sentience, and thrivability. Because syntony,
Yeah.
I've seen people post here and there, but it's not that commonly known. So a brief definition before we dive into it, I think will help people through the interview.
Perfect. And let me mention that none of these words are ones that I coined. These
Yeah,
are
yeah,
in the literature, and I've been inspired by them and how they've been used by others who come before me. Syntony,
right.
for example, Teilhard de Chardin is the one who I first
Oh,
encountered with
okay.
this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then Eric Jansch uses it in a way is closer to the way I tend to use it. A great system scientist who's written books called Design for Evolution and the Self-Evolving Universe.
Oh, right.
And in any event, syntony is a aligning and tuning with the flows of one's milieu, of one's environment, of one's moment, right? And
Yes.
it's different from harmony in that harmony can be like a chord, boom, that's it's the harmony, right? You can have it in harmony like that. But it can be static as well. You can be on one leg balanced, and
Mm,
then you are in a kind of a harmony with your environment. But syntony is all the time moving. It's like improvisational jazz, but
right,
it's always according with the moment and the
right.
flow. So it's very similar to harmony,
Mm,
but it's this dynamic, ever changing,
yes.
aligning and tuning. Like what I was doing on the boat.
Yes. Ever changing, aligning, and attuning. I like those
Yeah.
words, and that they seem to sum it up. So then, if we were to go on to sentience, what do you mean by when you use sentience?
Yeah, sentience is so similar to consciousness.
Yeah.
Um, and we talk about, and my father, Irvin Laszlo, writes a lot about the deeper consciousness and of not just humans, but of the universe as a
Yes.
whole.
Yeah.
Um, Sentience for me relates to consciousness, but it's in that aspect which on purpose is not so much about mind,
Right.
but it's more about intuition.
Yeah.
It's more about sensing your environment,
Yeah.
in that sense, intuition, and also, um, therefore, it is a um, kind of relational intelligence that doesn't involve words at times. It's expressed as the ineffable. I love
Okay.
that there's a word for not having words for things,
Yeah.
ineffable.
Ineffable. Okay, that's great. And I'm just realizing even getting you to define these terms probably denutes some of the richness that will come out later. But I'm just
Mm,
conscious of that as you were mentioning sentience.
mm.
So, and then thrivability. I think in my circles that's a little bit better known. But
Yeah.
what's your take on thrivability as a summary, as it were?
Yep. Well, thrivability is like sustainability 2.0 is the way
Yeah,
I see it,
yeah,
because sustainability is so important and necessary. This thrivability doesn't replace it, but it's
mm,
expands it and builds on it because
yeah,
in its strictest sense, sustainability is living within the carrying capacity of our environment.
yeah,
Important, very important. But there's nothing sexy about that. There's nothing that is joyful. There's
yeah,
where is the expression of celebration of life?
yeah.
You can live within the carrying capacity of your environment in a very, very strict way. But what about bringing in that the sacredness, the mystery, the magic, the sense of joy and of love?
Yeah.
So thrivability captures these aspects, but they're not so much captured in sustainability.
Okay, so that's a kind of brief definition of terms to inform the questions as we go through. So my first question is that one of the first ways I come across you, you were presenting on or talking about evolutionary leadership. So for most people are stuck in command or control systems or trying to escape them or create something else. What do you think is essential to evolutionary leadership that will help in the present moment that we're in?
Um, That's wonderful, it brings to mind this little expression from Renee Askins, who writes. It says the following: It says, "Underneath our lives, with their veneer of control, predictability, a deep, profound truth still resonates in us. By some grace, our souls still whisper to us. A wildness still calls to us, and it is up to us whether we listen."
Beautiful, I love that.
I like that. And because it captures this notion that leadership is not just efficiency, effectiveness, efficacy, being able to do things on task. Again, that's kind of like the sustainability with its,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Where's the joy in the heart? So evolutionary leadership involves listening into that which is seeking to emerge. And there's a key aspect of this, Dave, which is so much so related to this listening. It's not listening just with your ears. Yes,
yeah,
it's listening to others. What do they say? A good, in this sense, evolutionary leaders listens to others. But the others that he or she listens to are not just people.
yeah,
In this case, it's also listening to nature. It's
yeah,
listening to our ancestors. It's also listening to future generations, right?
yeah.
Just to mention this beautiful book by Elena Garro, author from Mexico. She has a title of a book called Recuerdos del Porvenir, which is memories of things yet to come.
I love that. Yeah.
Isn't that lovely?
Or
Memories
ancient,
of things
was
yet
it
to come.
ancient futures? It's
Indeed,
another
indeed. Right?
paradoxical capturing of that.
But there's something we know in this, just like what the quote I read to you now from
Yeah,
this Renee Atkins. There's a kind of there's a knowing, there's a whispering in our hearts.
yeah,
Evolutionary leadership taps into that.
yeah,
And not just in a very narcissistic, egocentric way, but taps into it by, again, like I mentioned before, it's surrendering or letting go, but not disconnecting.
yeah.
It is connecting with what is seeking to emerge.
So if we, I recognise that description in its totality perfectly. I think it's wonderful.
Mm.
Yet there is a kind of I was working delivering leadership programs, but I've stepped away partly because of there's so many associations and connotations of the word leadership, not in its original meaning, but of the kind of heroic male, the kind of one that inspires the crowd, as it were, and takes the crowd with them on their journey, as it were. What do you see that and evolutionary leadership is different from that kind of heroic archetype that we've been kind of brought up with, as it were?
Exactly. And this goes back to some of the writings of Campbell and the hero's
Yeah,
journey,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And now that definitely what informing this kind of leadership, which a hero, right? Coming
yeah,
in, it's a John Wayne image of the hero
yeah,
coming
yeah,
into the town
exactly.
with the gun saying,
Yeah,
I'm gonna set things straight here. It's
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
These aren't times for that anymore. And I
yeah,
think, I think, Dave, that the evolution of our species now is moving into a frame that is not so much about the individual. Not to say the individual doesn't matter,
yeah,
but now we matter in the kind of Ubuntu from
yeah,
this notion from the Xhosa and the Zulu of South Africa, the sense that I am because we are,
yeah,
and also the corresponding that we are because I am
yeah,
a part of this. So this is a co-evolutionary narrative, and the individual hero, the one with the cape, Jones. If you look to even the landscape now of our popular entertainment, the movies and so on, you'll see collective heroes. Often you'll get a point in the movie with all the hero action going on, where one of the heroes says, how are we going to do this? And the answer is together.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's more and more happening,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you get this sense of a collective hero. And I
yeah,
think, therefore, Dave, to get to your question here, it's not so much celebrating what we used to talk about as the keynote speakers,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's now the keynote listeners.
yeah,
And how do we become keynote listeners? And this other aspect, and I'll pass it back to you here, is this sense that we have to pair evolutionary leadership with evolutionary followership.
yeah,
And there's now work out there, which I'm just delighted that there's work on followership.
right,
And I think it's starting to, because it's an important role. Because
yeah,
again, the keynote listeners, it's very important. And they work with keynote leaders in such a way that once the keynote leaders are also listeners, right? I
yeah,
mean, this
yeah,
is this
yeah,
is
yeah,
the evolutionary leaders have to be both anding
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and I like this expression. It's not either or. It's not only both and, but it's more than.
More than.
So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
more than brings us into something emergent, and I
Yeah.
think that's beautiful.
Yeah. That's a very well captured there with that last statement. And I think I think that there's the kind of what you're describing encompasses the paradoxes, both the one and the many. And that I'm glad you added a little bit on Ubuntu. The second with we are because I am, because what gets forgotten is the overreaction to the I, which of course is very understandable in the moment we're in. But I think that interdependence is sometimes a bit lost when people wax lyrical about Ubuntu. So I'm moving on then. So this is now we're going. You make your little story illustrated Syntony in the moment on the boat. So you talked about you've mentioned dynamic harmony in other times. So how is it different to say just equanimity or being in balance or some kind of desired, state of perfection, as it were?
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to the Mediterranean here for a moment.
Okay, yeah.
I really wish I could, but okay. But I'm speaking to you from Buenos Aires, Argentina, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
So it's where we are at the moment. But this was actually on a recent visit to my parents, and it was a summertime, and the water is so warm, it's almost like bath water in the summertime, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
very salty, so you can float.
yeah,
And so I was doing that. I was out there, and I was being one with the sea. It was so beautiful. You can float with. If you struggle, then you don't float that well.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can be
yeah,
kicking around, but if you really connect and reach out and breathe slowly, you can float.
yeah,
Yeah. But there was a sense of relaxing into that and of letting go. But then I did a little experiment. I said, so what would happen if I not only let go, but I disconnected?
yeah,
So I went limp.
yeah,
I just went limp, and I started to sink.
yeah,
So I think this is a wonderful metaphor for this, in the sense that if you are engaging with the flows in the moment, but staying engaged, but listen, not trying to second guess what's emerging, but really listening. Can,
yeah,
can I show you what's on my chair?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So look, I have this here. If you can see this, bring it a little closer.
Be the systems you want to see in the world. I'm reading
Exactly.
that out for anybody that will be on the audio version of
Thank
the
you.
podcast.
Indeed.
Yeah,
So you can see it keys off of this
yeah,
expression from
yeah,
Mahatma Gandhi, who says, right,
yeah,
be the change you wish to see in the world.
yeah,
So this is be the systems you want to see in the world.
yeah,
But it says two other things here. It
yeah,
says be you in the world.
yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah.
So that's very
Those are in larger font, as it were.
in large font. It says
Yeah,
be you in the world. Because that's in that whole phrase, be the systems you want to see in the world. In large font, it's be you in the world.
yeah.
And in the small font, the other words that are there says the systems want to see.
You in the world.
And when you have that component, Dave, it brings in a kind of empathetic intelligence, a relational intelligence that is
Yeah,
so needed because I do think that the next stage in human evolution now is a form of sentience or collective intelligence. But collective intelligence has a couple of precursors that we first need to
yeah,
develop capacities. And one is connective intelligence, knowing how to connect and to what dynamics in our environment to connect with. Because
yeah,
if we syntonize with the terrorist factions, et cetera, we can be in a bubble, but it's not the larger expression of syntony of
yeah,
the cosmos. So how do we
yeah.
connect into a deeper frame, which is always, and I will say it, always tied to love.
Right.
Always.
Yeah, yeah,
But the other aspect, therefore, is empathetic intelligence. And we
yeah,
combine connective intelligence and empathetic intelligence. Then you have the basis for collective intelligence.
yeah.
That is really life affirming, future creating, and opportunity increasing. Um,
Those really interesting because I've been active in that world myself. Those are interesting ways to distill how it works. And I think, yeah, there is collective intelligence happening, but it's not for the good of the whole or for the good of the people. It's a kind of group mentality that people get in, and we can see it very destructively acting in the world at the moment. Yeah. So moving on from Syntony, and you mentioned sentience in your description there. Why is sentient in intelligence, say, more embracing than our current version, you might say, of intelligence, or how we see intelligence? What does sentient intelligence add or gift us with?
Well, it's today I seem to have a bunch of stories here.
Okay,
But
please share. Yeah.
when I was in high school, I can remember our chemistry teacher was helping us understand what is a supersaturated solution.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that there are a lot of S's in there, not easy to say fast. But if you know, what is it? So by definition, he said, a supersaturated solution is a solution of water or what have you that can hold more than it can hold.
Yeah.
Like, how interesting that is. So, and he demonstrated this by taking a glass of warm water and stirring in, I don't know if it was salt or sugar, but either of those things get absorbed. I think it was salt. And they get absorbed. And then you look and the thing is transparent. Where did the salt go? It's been absorbed.
Yeah.
And then he stirs in more, and there comes a point when it can't absorb anymore.
Yeah.
But the salt is held in suspension
Yeah.
in the water. So that's when it gets supersaturated because it's held in suspension. If he pours any more in, it crystallizes out.
Yeah.
Then it starts to form at the bottom of the water. There's like a pile of salt and wet salt at the bottom, but it starts to crystallize out. So I think that sentience also functions that way. It allows us to hold more than we can hold, to know more than we can know,
Okay,
to
beautiful.
sense more than we can sense by ourselves.
Yeah.
Because now we are being informed. My father writes about this as informed, putting form into.
Yeah.
So it actually helps us become or be in different ways when we listen into, again, not just with the ears, but with this, what I call the Syntony sense, right? Yeah. As like human tuning forks. Yeah. We listen into where are we in this consonance, in this coherence with this life-affirming, future creating and opportunity increasing dynamics of flows around us. And then when we sense that with the sentience component, then we can act more consciously and perhaps more strategically even as a good leader in ways that are informed by things we would not ourselves have been able to figure out in our own small frame. But because we are connected now, we can actually have more information. We're supersaturated in that sense. That's where sentience comes in.
So there's something then about the capacity of 5, 6, 7 senses of exercising those simultaneously rather than just trying to process something mentally.
Beautiful. That's it. I mean, have you had that experience also of somehow paying attention to something that you don't know why you might know this or think that you're maybe knowing something, but you pay attention to that?
Yeah.
And have you had that kind of sense?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think all humans can do that.
Yeah. Well, so that's
the problem, Dave. Can I mention one other thing with this? That the problem with this is that we have become so technologically dependent these days.
Yeah.
That often we kind of give up or relinquish or disconnect, right? This is the cutting off, the disconnecting, this capacity of knowing. You take a modern human being, you take me, you put me in a forest at night. I mean, I'm living in an urban environment in Buenos Aires. It's buildings all around, but there are a lot of greenery as well. But it's different. You put me in a forest that I don't know what forest this is. You put me in a forest in the middle of the night someplace, right? And the canopy is such that I can't even see the stars. Not that I'm really good at navigating by stars, but I can't even see that.
Yeah.
I would be lost. I'd be I'm lost. Where am I? But you take somebody who has grown up with the land and who knows how to listen, who has the sense ability,
Yeah.
sensibility to really use this kind of syntony sense. We all have this.
Yeah.
And instead of being lost, they're found because all the trees know where they are. They're found, and the trees
Yeah.
are their friends in this case.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they can find their way through this place. So
Yeah.
we can't if our device doesn't work,
Yeah.
we're like, oh my gosh, I don't have a GPS.
Yeah.
I can't find the nearest restaurant because I'm
Exactly.
lost.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so this
Yeah.
this I think is where this component, this sense, so I call the syntony sense, has atrophied
Yeah.
tremendously, and it needs to be exercised.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's I think for the next stage of our human evolution as a species, the exercising of this kind of syntony sense is very
Yeah.
important.
And another thing I've heard you talk about when I've been online with you or in groups with you, you mention humaning well.
Mhm.
So I think it'd be great for people that are unfamiliar with your work to know, how everything you've said so far fits with humaning well.
You asked the best questions, Dave. That's a good one. One of my favorite things to explore as well. That's actually my current inquiry right now. How do I human well?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean to do so in such a way that, again, is like species centric. Like I just
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to, I don't care about that wouldn't be humaning well.
Yeah.
So it comes from, actually was inspired by listening to something that Alan Watts, a recording from Alan Watts, and he
Yeah.
was in the recording talking about, he's this scholar of Taoism and of Far Eastern and of Zen Buddhism and Far Eastern philosophies, and translating them into Western terms. And one of the things he was talking about was how in the springtime, which you in the Northern Hemisphere are just now coming into, um, there is, it's not as if spring happens and then the trees, put out their leaves and the flowers put out their buds and that's not what happens in the spring.
Yeah.
It's the other way around.
Yeah.
It's the trees that are leaving, but leafing, perhaps that's a bit, they're not
Leafing.
leaving, not goodbye. They're leafing.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
putting their
Yeah.
leaves out,
Yeah.
and the flowers that are blossoming and blooming, and and the birds that are returning and singing. That is spring.
Right.
So that actually is spring by those things happening. And it made me think, okay, so if this is the tree leafing as a true expression of the universe in accordance with this time, that's
Yeah.
what the tree does. If it leaves at another time, well, it doesn't, right? It
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
doesn't. So it just seemed to me that humans are not really listening very well. How do we human well so
Yeah.
that we are a true expression and accord with the moment of this time? And some of my greatest teachers are babies, my cats, dogs, other beings. The trees are wonderful teachers of
Yeah.
listening into and also helping us human well, because we then learn our relational
Yeah.
expression. How can we be part of that expression of the moment by playing our own? It's like in a jazz ensemble, we have to play our piece. I'm not going to play the piece of the tree. That's
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
But our voice as humans is important, but it's not the most important. But
Yeah.
to be part of this, evolutionary jazz ensemble that nature has been playing since time immemorial, but to do so in syntony, in dynamic harmony with all the other beings. I think that's, for me, the quest to human well. And just to one last thing, my current exploration is full spectrum humaning,
Mm-hmm.
deep humaning. And that means this expression of unity and diversity. It's unity without uniformity
Yeah.
and diversity without fragmentation.
Yeah.
How can we do that?
Yeah.
And not just one mode of humaning, but all modes that are future creating, life affirming, and opportunity increasing.
So I love the picture you've created, but what occurs to me as you're saying that, the kind of most friction and most distress is interhuman, that we cause each other. So how do you see that showing up on the, interpersonal, in families or at work or in kind of, I'd say, less comfortable situations, you could say?
Right. Well, for me, and I'm going to be a little bit, I suppose, showing my biases, but I'm very, very concerned about our Western frames of mind,
Yeah,
and really frames of mind. I don't think they're very much in syntony these
yeah,
days. There's such a push for this, what I see as strident individualism
yeah,
and this kind of self-righteous independence.
yeah,
Like, don't tell me what to do. I'm my own boss.
yeah, 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 yeah,
It's like the antithesis of Ubuntu almost, like,
yeah, yeah,
and that I think is really, I was going to say at the heart of the problem, but it's almost not heart at all. It's at the
yeah,
mind of the problem. It's
yeah, yeah,
here. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
and it's the ego frame of that. Look, I'm all that matters, and I need to take care of number one. It's a kind of an ethos in a way that says, I need to take care of number one,
yeah,
myself. And if everybody did like I did, then we wouldn't have anybody being a weight on the world, right? There
yes,
would be
yeah, yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm being ethical. I'm just looking after myself.
Mm.
But in today's world of interconnectedness, there is there's the need for this collective hero, for this evolutionary leader, for the leadership and followership. We don't even have in Spanish a word for followership.
Right.
You can talk about liderazgo, but you can't talk about seguidorazgo.
Okay.
So in English, you can talk about followership, but
Yeah.
in many languages, it's how do you even express this way of emerging and being
Yeah.
part of the narrative in support of healthy dynamics without needing to be the most important piece. The leader
Yeah.
isn't supposed to be the most important piece either,
No.
but
Right.
still they might have an instigating in a positive way impact. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. I think I'm going to skip the next question because I think you've explained listing in quite a lot of detail throughout.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
and this is one of the questions I'm most keen to talk to you about, is this notion of cosmic intelligence and deep time, and how much that influences who we are in the world. The ways that humans see and sees oneself role on the planet or role in the cosmos. I'm keen to hear your view on the importance of this sort of cosmic intelligence and this evolutionary, not just evolution as a scientific process, but in and as and through oneself.
Wonderful. And I know you do so much work and deep explorations of these notions of time from a more cosmic perspective and
Yeah,
understanding the relationships between our, again, very Western linear time, measured time,
yeah,
the chronos time, and then
yeah,
the lived time, the kairos time. Um, so I start by thinking of time as a human invention. I
yeah,
mean, it's a measurement. It's a measurement of what? Duration.
yeah,
Duration exists. We measure it in different ways, and by measuring it, we have time.
yeah,
But the experience is that of duration.
yeah,
So, and our human sensibility of this, let's do a little thought experiment, Dave, if you will. If
yeah,
we were to imagine that we're going to take a film of the Earth from its beginnings, right? 4.5, maybe closer, it's 4.5 billion years. So let's look at that. Billion years.
yeah,
Okay. And we're looking at this time, but in order to get a full film of this, we need to think about how many frames per second we got.
yeah,
So and we're going to round, I think it's like 33 frames, high definition is 80 frames per second, but let's take it at like 10 frames per second. Okay, so 10
yeah,
frames per second. If we did 10 frames per second, and no, let's make it a little faster. Let's make 100 frames per second. 100 frames per second. And each frame is 10,000 years. Each frame,
yeah,
right, is 10,000 years at 100 frames per second.
yeah,
It's going to go by very quickly, right?
yeah,
So in 1 minute, you've already got 60 of those, right? So when you look at this and you put the film together from the beginning to now, what do you see? You get about I don't know, actually, I should calculate this up. You get something like a 5 minute, 10 minute film. You get
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
longer than that, right?
yeah,
Minutes, right, of this whole exploration. But because each frame, and there are 100 frames per second, is 10,000 years, you don't see any things.
right.
So you'll see swaths of land moving around.
Yeah,
You'll see white parts going in and out from the
yeah,
top and the bottom,
yeah,
right? Um, you'll see greenery moving across and yellow moving across, right? So the deserts, right?
yeah.
And when it comes to the human era, you don't see any humans. Because if 10,000 years is in 1 second,
Yeah, yeah,
sorry, is in 1/100th of a second,
yeah,
you don't see any humans.
yeah,
So you don't see any things. And yet you see this whole time moving, right?
yeah,
So in that experience of time, it's not human time. This is
yeah,
Earth time.
yeah,
And Earth looks like a living, pulsing being in this
yeah,
beautiful video,
yeah,
right? It can look like a pulsing being, but it's not human time.
yeah,
So if we were to go the other extreme and say, okay, in our experience of time, maybe there are things, and there are Star Trek episodes and stories as well, the things that are moving at much faster rates than us, they can't communicate it because we to them are moving very slowly,
yeah,
like
yeah,
this, and they're like buzzing around. We can't even, there's a different dimension on that. Why would that not be if we are in relation to Earth this way, that there are other things that are also moving at different rates? Could well be. So again, our sense of time is very anthropocentric.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Very much, this is our sense. But if we connect to the deeper pulse of evolution,
yeah,
and we see and we can look, now we can look through time in our exploration through the Hubble telescope and the James Webb telescope and all these, we get to see the deep time
yeah,
across we see patterns there.
yeah,
And the information that we can get is, how do we accord with those patterns? Again, how are we part of this bigger narrative?
yeah,
That I think is the question for our species as well, not just to be in our kind of narcissistic speciesistic.
speciesism,
Yes,
speciesism, yeah,
yes. But to see that this is we're experiencing this kind of time. The mayfly experiences a whole lifetime in just a 24 hours.
yeah,
So how do
yeah,
we experience this in a larger,
yeah,
and understanding that even trees, if you take their time, they're all the time dancing and moving. Just to us, they seem still. But the tree has a much longer lifetime, and you can see by the time they have curved into their being, they're never grow like a pole.
no,
They
no,
Right? So this
yeah,
is their dance, but it's a different timing
yeah.
to their dance. So I
So
think
the
this is the invitation to listen into that
so
deeper
I
part.
would, based on what you've said earlier and listening to that, seems to be you're pointing to there's a version or an expression of syntony and sentience that is extended enough or has experiential connection to that picture that you're painting, that one's own sentience, one's own intelligence um, has woken up to that cosmic process, you could say.
This is not something, it may seem a little weird because it's asking us to expand our sense of self
Yeah,
and to connect again, to connect. It's a letting go of our small,
yeah,
right? And connecting, it's floating on the surface of the sea, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it reminds me of this quote from Buckminster Fuller. So there are people who have been thinking like this. So aside from people like Alan Watts and others, and you yourself, there are people who think like this and sense like this.
yeah, yeah,
So Buckminster Fuller, when asked, what is he?
yeah,
His response was, I live on Earth at present, and
yeah,
I don't know what I am.
yeah,
I know that I am not a category. I am not a thing, a noun. I seem to be a verb, an evolutionary process, an integral function of the universe.
yeah,
And I think to have that sense it involves this kind of listening or the syntony sense, the
Yeah.
kind of listening that I was mentioning of with all of our senses, all of our being.
I suppose, I mean, that's a beautiful encapsulation by Buckminster Fuller. And I think there is a challenge in the moment that I think will pose as the final question, or maybe there'll be something to close. But at the same time, the shadow of the destruction and degradation and damage that our existence is doing to the planet, that might seem about as far away as it ever has been to have that sense of oneself. What would you say would help those that are in despair make a turn towards the sort of this like the significance of human intelligence and sentience in this moment has an enormous role to play despite everything that we're doing to destroy ourselves?
Yes, this is the question. How do we human well when everything around us is chaos and when so many others are not humaning
Yeah,
well?
yeah,
Yeah. And this is the polycrisis that you talk about. I like to think about it as a meta crisis indeed,
yeah,
because it's beyond just the additive, all these different crises, the polyness of the crisis. There's a whole different vibe or sense of being
yeah,
in the world. It's captured by the scientists. They talk about the VUCA world,
yeah,
volatile,
yeah,
uncertain, complex, and
yeah,
ambiguous. Some of the social scientists put it as RUPT, rapid, unpredictable, paradoxical, and tangled, because
yeah,
that's the way life feels.
yeah,
Rapid,
yeah,
unpredictable, paradoxical, and tangled. Well, how am I
yeah,
supposed to human well when this is
yes,
happening?
yeah,
And my sense is that by tapping into, by listening again deep, by using your syntony sense to listen to the deeper underlying patterns where the truth lies of the universe. What is the truth? But again, I'm going to read again what Rene Askin said. I began with this, right?
yeah,
Underneath our lives, with their veneer of control and predictability, a deep, profound truth still resonates in us. By some grace, our souls still whisper to us. Our wildness still calls to us, and is up to us whether we listen. So this to me, Dave, is the calling, even amidst the chaos and the shouting and the violence, to listen to that deep
yeah,
sense that is speaking, whispering in us.
yeah,
And maybe I can end with this, Dave, if
yes,
you allow me another story. I took a workshop once with a wonderful woman, a shaman from Burkina Faso, from the Dagara tribe in
okay,
West Africa.
yeah,
Her name is Sobonfu Some. And at the beginning of the workshop, she's a very stern, very matriarchal woman, and she stood right in front of me and said, "Why are you here?" And it was very, so she's no nonsense here. And I
yeah, yeah,
said, maybe as a kind of response to ease, I said, I want to learn how to dance. It was not a workshop on dancing, but I said I wanted to learn how to dance, the dance that the universe is dancing. Because
okay,
I feel like I'm not doing that. I feel like I see murmurations of starlings. I see, schoolings of fish. They all move. So gazelle bounding together, they don't run into each other. There's no like,
yeah, yeah,
excuse me, you didn't put your blinker on.
yeah,
Or, there's no traffic control.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they
yeah,
do it together with grace. And I feel I want to learn that kind of grace and the kind of flow. And I don't feel like I don't have that. So she said, okay, right. Okay, good. We're in the right place. So we did that. And at the end of the workshop, she asked again, and I'll end with this. She said, "So, do you still feel that?" She asked everybody, right? It wasn't just me,
yeah,
but when she got to me, she said, "So, do you still feel that you want to learn how to dance, the dance that the universe is doing?" I said, "No, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to learn how to be danced by the universe."
okay,
There's a small difference
yeah,
because if you are trying to dance, you're not actually dancing.
yeah,
You're all the time efforting.
yeah,
But if you're being danced, again, you are letting go but not disconnecting.
yeah,
So my sense is for people who are struggling in times like this is to breathe and listen and see what they can do to be danced by the deeper life affirming, opportunity increasing, and future creating dynamics that are all the time flowing through them that come from the deeper dimensions of Earth and of the cosmos. Go out, hug a tree, sit on the ground. You know, my daughter, who is now 26, their generation, instead of being on this thing, if somebody's too much on their device, they'll say, touch grass.
Yeah.
That's like in my generation was like, get real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Let's say, touch grass.
yeah.
I think it's a beautiful expression for what we can do simply to augment our syntony sense. Touch grass.
So altering perception to be danced by the universe rather than to dance with the universe. That's a great note to end. Thank you so much for spending time with me and sharing your deep wisdom, and I'm sure whoever listens to this is really going to benefit from your rigorous explorations. So thanks so much.
Thank you, and I will send you the hearts.
Thank you. Oh, look at that. Thank you so much. And I'll stop right there.